Hi, my name is Tammy Close and I work in the Arts Funding and Development team at Creative New South Wales. Thank you for joining our Create Connects Creative Koori Projects information session. We're glad to have you here today and we appreciate your time. Next slide, please. Just a little bit of housekeeping. So please note that this webinar is being recorded and may be published online. For people who have just joined us, please mute your mics, keep your mics on mute and turn your cameras off. If you'd like to ask a question, please feel free to use the chat box in the right-hand corner. Introduce yourself, where you're coming from, what land you're on. To access live captions, there will be a link provided in the chat box as well. And during this presentation, I'm going to be keeping my camera off just until the Q&A section at the end. So if everybody can keep their mics on mute and their cameras off, that would be greatly appreciated. Okay, next slide, please. On behalf of Create New South Wales, I'd like to acknowledge and pay our respects to the traditional owners of this land and the elders past, present and future, and to the lands from where you are joining us today. We hope you and all your families are safe and well. Next slide, please. Over the next 4 years, the New South Wales Government will be investing $6 million per year to the Arts and Cultural Funding Program. This includes a 10% increase in investment for projects and programs to support small to medium sector and independent artists. Next slide, please. Thanks, Colin. In this session, we will give you an update on the key changes of the Arts and Cultural Funding Program and applications guidelines, inform you of some of Create New South Wales funding opportunities, walk you through parts of Creative Koori Project Guidelines and some of the application requirements, documents like the project plan template and budget template. We will also have wonderful Melody Gibson join us from Create New South Wales, who will give you an introduction to Creative Kids and how you can become a Creative Kids provider. And then after that, we'll have a little Q&A session where we'll all pop on our, turn our cameras on and connect a bit more better and that you have an opportunity to ask any questions in regards to Creative Koori projects. Next slide, please. So these are the key changes of the 2021-2022 Arts and Cultural Funding Program Guidelines. So in the last round, we listened to the sector's feedback and have changed the time period of rounds being opened from 4 weeks to now 6 weeks. We understand that more time is needed in gathering evidence, documentation such as letters of support, letters of confirmation, thinking through your project ideas, planning, consulting community, connecting with potential collaborators, and creating potential partnerships. We have added another option in answering your project merit and impact through video response. This is only for applicants who apply for funding under $20,000, particularly it being more specific for projects and Creative Koori project funding. We have changed the guidelines to improve accessibility contact options for artists with disability, now displayed at the beginning of guidelines. And the guidelines also include various languages to support artists from culturally and linguistically diverse backgrounds and how they can contact Create New South Wales using an interpreting service. Most of these key changes have been reflected in the application forms as well. Next slide, please. Excuse me. So these are the funding opportunities, some of the funding opportunities. We have 2 rounds of project funding, Creative Koori Projects, and annual organisation funding. You can see the dates in the table, when they open and when they close, and the months of the announcement dates. We also have 2 rounds of creative leadership opportunities. Round 1 will open next month on the 20th of August. So if you haven't already, you might want to subscribe to our e-news on our website. And that will help you keep up to date with the latest funding opportunities that are available. So we also have small project grants, which are open all year round, and that is for funding from $500 to $5,000. Next slide, please. Okay, so Creative Koori. 2 years ago, we changed the Creative Koori Projects eligibility applicant type to Aboriginal applicants only, and this was to continue supporting the growth of Aboriginal arts and culture sector in New South Wales. We have had some actually really fantastic projects come from this funding round. We hope that we don't lose this, we hope it stays, and we hope that you can be successful in this funding as well. We want to see that your arts and culture activity employs Aboriginal artists, arts and culture workers, and or creates meaningful experiences for your community. The maximum you can apply for is $60,000. What you need to know in regard to the funding request is Create New South Wales does not provide 100% of funding. We do expect that you provide independent financial contribution, whether that is in the form of cash or in-kind resources. So if your funding request is under $20,000, you must demonstrate that you have at least 10% independent financial contribution of your total project. If your funding request is from $20,000 to $60,000, then we'd like to see a 30% independent financial contribution. Next slide, please. So in this application, you will be assessed by these 3 criteria: merit, impact, and viability. Things you may want to think about in merit is, what is your project idea about? Give us a brief outline of who, what, why, where, when, and how. Who are the key creatives? Have they been confirmed? Do you have their CVs or short bios? Think about mapping out your timeline of activities that you need to achieve in your project plan. And can you provide previous or current samples of work related to your project? Also, have you approached partnerships, key creatives, elders, or local Aboriginal organisations for support letters? So support letters are, it's very important for you to have as many support letters as you can from anybody that is relevant to the project. Impact. So impact is explaining why your project matters and who will benefit from it. So, and also to think, what would the overall impact be if you receive this funding? Is there a gap that you want to address? What is the need and why now? So think about who will benefit from your project. Will it be artists, audiences, participants, or all of the above? And how will they benefit from your project and why? Viability, we want you to be realistic on your project costs, investigate quotes and add as evidence to support these costs. Make sure that your income and expenditure break even. Make sure it's not deficit or surplus, it breaks even. Have you considered reaching out for sponsorships or any in-kind support, maybe for a venue, materials or catering costs. If you have partners that would like to be involved, what can they contribute? Will you cut back your project costs if your funding is not successful? We want you to tell us how you will manage those risks. Next slide, please. So this is a project plan example. You will be expected to download and fill out this project plan template and attach when completed. This is a good way to plan your project, and you may want to add in another column for dates as well. Some of this information can help add to the overall merit responses in telling us about your project. So you can use bits and pieces of this in this project plan to help you with the rationale of the overview of the project in your merit section. This template demonstrates your project's activities and if your artists and venues are confirmed or not confirmed. It tells us what you have to achieve in delivering your project. Next slide, please. Sorry, I have a little bit of a cough. Is your project a development or presentation or both? You'll be asked to choose out of, for individuals, you can choose either audience or art form impact. And for organisations, they have a choice of the three that includes operational impact. So for audience impact, we want to know who is your audience, who is your targeted audiences and why? How can your project increase, improve or change their participation? For art form impact, we want to know how will your project take your art form to its next phase of professional development and why? For operational impact for organisations only, we want to know how does your project increase capacity, develop skills, deliver cost savings, or enhance income generation. Please note that the one you select should best reflect the outcome of your project. Is it about art form, or is it about audience, or is it about operational? Next slide, please.
Sorry, Tammy, I can't hear you.
Oh, sorry, I just had a call come in, beg your pardon. Let me just go through maybe a bit more of that. Okay, so I'll just go through the audience impact. So the audience impact, we want to know who is your targeted audiences, how can your project increase, improve, or change your participation? For art form impact, we want to know how will your project take your art form to its next phase of professional development. And for operational impact, for organisations only, we want to know how does your project increase capacity, develop skills, deliver cost savings, and enhance income generation. Please note that the one you select should best reflect the outcome of your project. So is it audience? Is your project about bringing in audiences to presentation and having audience numbers, but bottoms on seats, if you'd like to say, or is it about your art form? And is it about operations of an organisation, governance, employment? Next slide, please. So this is the budget. This is what the budget template looks like. This is just an example that I've made. So your budget should state whether income is confirmed or unconfirmed, as this will affect the viability of your project. Make sure your income and expenditure has a break-even budget with no surplus or deficit. For fees, we would like to see payments of fees and salaries to artists, creatives, cultural consultants, and art workers be consistent with industry standards. So there are service organisations out there such as NAVA and Media Entertainment Arts Alliance, which those links will come up in the chat box, that they can provide you with an up-to-date advice on payment rates for artists and creatives and arts workers. You can also have a look online for this information as well. So in the budget template, make sure you read the tabs, instructions and key terms. If you get stuck, feel free to give us a call at Creative New South Wales. We'll be happy to help. So just in that, the pink area there, be realistic about your income and expenditure. Try and have your independent financial contribution confirmed if you can. It will improve your viability if you can have that confirmed. If you can't, then just put that in there that you can't. Can you provide quotes? And can you provide confirmation support letters from the venues or sponsorships confirming those amounts stated in the income? Because if you have that documentation available with those amounts in that support letter or confirmation letter, the assessors will see that they've got that in writing. The viability is there. Next slide, please. All Creative Koori projects will be assessed by the Aboriginal Arts and Culture Board. The board members assess your applications, merit and impact individually. Then those scores are then amalgamated. Your viability is assessed internally by Creative New South Wales staff, and we provide that at the panel assessment meeting for the board. So when the board meets for the panel assessment meeting, they decide on rankings based on how each application addressed the criteria of the merit and impact. After ranking, the board will consider how the recommended applications addressed distribution within the state and priority areas as a commitment to inclusive and equitable access. The final recommendations will be sent to the Minister for the Arts of New South Wales to approve. Next slide, please. You'll be notified in November of the outcome of this application for round 1 of Creative Koori. If you are successful for funding, you will receive a contract. All parties will need to sign that contract. Then you will receive your copy, and then the funds will be received within 2 to 4 weeks. If you are unsuccessful, you can receive feedback on your application if you are considering to apply in future. Please note, this funding is not guaranteed. Creative New South Wales receives more applications than it can support. You may also be successful but receive less funding than you requested. And if that is the case, we will ask you to revise your project plan and budget template. Next slide, please. We recommend that you read the How to Make an Application Help Guide. This document will provide more detail on the assessment criteria. Sorry, I just had a call coming through, and I know that fades out the audio. Okay. We recommend that you read the How to Make an Application Help Guide. This document will provide more detail on the assessment criteria, and we'll have other helpful tips to help filling out your application. We also have lab sessions available where you can talk about your project idea with one of our Aboriginal staff in the Arts Funding and Development team. That's Colin Kinchilla, Taji Moore and myself. We will send you that information on how to book a lab session after this webinar. So I hope the Creative Koori Projects information was of benefit to you. We look forward to reading all of your exciting and innovative applications that benefit Aboriginal artists, arts and culture workers, and in providing deadly experiences to your communities.